Hi, everyone. Dorothea Hendriks here, your coach in public speaking and in presentation skills. My guest today is none other than Dr. Donald G., also known as Skip Mondragon, a Colorado native and an internal medicine specialist. Skip and his family served 26 years in the U.S. Army. They were separated during 4 deployments for 37 months, including 30 months in combat zones. The highlight of his military career was serving as officer in charge of the 21st Combat Support Hospital in Mosul, Iraq, from November 2003 to February 2004. He was responsible for all 220 hospital personnel, the patients, and hospital operations. He also worked closely with the 101st Airborne Division and Major General David Petraeus, commander of the 101st Airborne Division, and his deputy commanders. Now retired from Army life, Skip, Dr. Mondragon, and the love of his life, Sherry, have relocated to Midlothian, Texas. Skip tells me they are each other's number one fan, the best friend, and strongest supporters. And you can see that because Skip was going like this, yes, 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 yes. Welcome, welcome, Skip. It's a real gift. It's a gift for me to have you here today and interview you, about your experiences, your TEDx talk, and your experiences actually wrestling depression.
Thank you, Dorothea. It's indeed my pleasure to be here and to share with you and your audience.
We met when you were doing your TEDx talk, and you did your TEDx talk in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And the title was Tough Guys Are an Endangered Species. So I have a couple of questions here to start us off, and that is, why did you decide to speak on the TEDx stage about tough guys, about your depression being an endangered species?
For a few reasons. One, I decided to speak on the TEDx stage to give a wider audience to this topic because stigma still exists around the topic of mental illness.
Yeah.
And men in particular are less prone to open up and talk about medical issues in general and mental health problems specifically. And because men are less likely to do this, I've known that this is part of my calling is to deal with this issue, to help men to understand it's okay that you're struggling. And this is just part of the human journey is that we're going to struggle from time to time. And to struggle in silence is one of the things you don't want to do because that will get you in trouble. That got me in trouble, and that's gotten countless other men in trouble and can lead in its ultimate result in suicide. And we don't want men to go down that path and these self-destructive behaviors, and certainly don't want men to end up dying by suicide. So dealing with the stigma, giving a wider audience to this topic of mental health, attacking this issue that you're less than a man if you open up and say, I'm struggling, I need help. So I wanted to give a wider audience to this whole topic. Plus the fact I'm a tough guy. I'm a colonel. I'm a national veterans wrestling champion. Yeah. I'm a combat vet. I'm all these things, but I succumbed to this dark, deadly disease. And so I wanted other men to know this disease, guess what? Doesn't matter how tough you are, you can become a victim of it. So that's why I wanted to stand up there in my dress uniform, arrayed with all those ribbons and accoutrements there with the eagles on my shoulders to impress upon people this disease, it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter whether you have an MD behind your name, whether you're a colonel. It doesn't matter. You can still become a victim of this disease if you don't take care of yourself accordingly And sometimes things are stacked against you. Genetics, I had genetics stacked against me. Adverse childhood events, I definitely had those stacked against me. Trauma, oh yes, I saw lots of trauma through the course of my childhood, and teenage and adult years, lots of death, lots of loss, and so forth. But I didn't know how to deal with it. And
Yeah.
so, and we'll probably talk some more about that because you
Yeah.
had difficult questions.
Your speech, your talk, your TEDx talk about tough guys are endangered species. I'll say for anyone who hasn't gone and listened to it, has watched it, really, I encourage everyone to go and watch it. It's such a powerful story that you tell. And it's amazing because there you are in your dress uniform. You are a tough guy. You are a wrestling champion. You have served in the army. You've seen death, destruction, and mayhem. And, especially as a doctor, I mean, things that a lot of other people don't see. But yet you supposedly were conditioned for that, but the depression got you anyway. So what I don't understand is here you are a medical doctor, and yet you suffered in silence. Why didn't you come out and say something? Because you must have treated other people with depression, seen somebody else have it. So didn't you have an idea, or is it just that you had blocked yourself that it can't happen to me?
I I think a few things were going on. One, certainly denial, but two, a modus operandi in my own life, being a tough guy. And tough guys, what do? We push hard. We just keep pushing through things. That's the mentality of a tough guy. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. And we even have this saying in wrestling that we call it gut it out. So when things are so hard, when your lungs feel like when your lungs are just burning and oh, you just hurt, when your muscles ache so hard, when your brain is telling you just stop. And you're in this tough match in this contest, and you might even be down by a point or two, and there's just something internal in you that says, no, I am not going to give up. I'm going to find a way to beat this opponent. I am not going to stop. Or you're running a wind sprints, and it's like, one more, a little bit harder. Nobody's going to beat me in this. You're doing some push-ups. A few more, a few more, a few more. It's this idea of gutting it out. And so that's the mentality that I had in there. And then that identity. I'm a colonel. I'm a soldier. I'm a wrestler. All of this takes on this persona of being tough. And so when you have that, you gain success from that, and lots of success and accolades from that, well, you just keep repeating that. But the problem is when you begin to suffer and struggle with mental health issues, that doesn't work so well.
Yeah.
Because what you need is you need help, you need support. But if you don't understand and step back to look at the bigger picture, oh, I'm not doing so well by myself with this. I need some help. I should get some help. You just keep pushing harder and sinking deeper and deeper and deeper. And so you just keep pushing and you're getting deeper and deeper and you're pushing. And as this spiral just down deeper and deeper into that dark pit. But again, it was that modus operandi, being that tough guy, and how I proceeded through life for decades and decades. And finally ended up under a desk, curled up in a fetal position.
In your talk, you say that at one point there's a voice in your head, that shouts out and says, Skip, go get help. What point did that voice shout out at you? Because you went through a lot before that voice actually popped up, didn't you?
That was going almost 10 months. 9.5, 10 months of struggles. And April 17th, 2014, I go to the office, normal day, horrible insomnia, didn't sleep well, up early, did my normal thing, got to the office early, usually got there early before anybody else on that entire floor, and unlocked the door, turned on the lights, stepped inside, and then everything just came crashing down. Turned around, locked the door, turned off the lights, went and closed my blinds. Had these beautiful ceiling to floor windows. Just closed the blinds, turned off the phones, and I crawled up under my desk on that musty carpet. And for 4 hours, I'm asking myself in this fetal position, Skip, what are you doing? Skip, how did you get here? Skip, what happened? You're a tough guy. You're a colonel. You're a national wrestling champion. You're a combat vet. How did you get here? Now, all these scenes and memories just come flooding through my mind from things over the years. And then slowly, I began to put the pieces together of all the symptoms I had been experiencing. The horrible insomnia, the loss of confidence, the indecision, the bodily aches, the aches and pains, the decreased libido, sex drive that was just in the toilet, the impaired cognition. So many symptoms there, the horrible blue mood. And when I say blue mood, I'm just saying feeling down. I mean, it's like a dark cloud that descends upon you. And this withdrawal. I'm a gregarious guy. I like being around people. I like interacting with people. I just didn't want to be around people. And then just lost pleasure in normal things. So we call that anhedonia in medical terms, and the things I normally enjoy doing. Coaching wrestling, I didn't want to have anything to do with that. Watching wrestling, I didn't want to have anything to do with that. I just didn't want to do things. I want to be around people there. So my world just shrunk. It's like going through life in black and white. And so it finally started coming together for me. It was like it was being this observer participant as I lay under that mist. And then after that, those 4 hours, it's like, oh, Skip, you're depressed. Go get help.
Is it after that? At what point did you decide to write your book, Wrestling Depression is Not for Wimps? Was it at what point after you realized that you were suffering from depression and you went and got help, you wrote your book?
The book came out years later, but a couple of incidences that led up to that. First and foremost was a call from my brother. It's probably 7, 8 weeks into my recovery, still struggling. And throughout the period of my depression and into that portion of my recovery, my prayers had been, God, please deliver me from this darkness. I prayed, I screamed, I cried, I begged God to deliver me from this darkness. And I got a call from my younger brother, Chris, and he was so excited. Skip. I was just at a Bible study with Franklin Graham, son of Billy Graham. And Franklin had been in Raleigh, North Carolina, met with some different businessmen there, and he taught about suffering. And the gist of it was that if Christ suffered so brutally upon the cross, why, as Christians, particularly as Western Christians, do we think we should be immune from suffering? It was like, boom. And it brought to mind a scripture from Philippians where the Apostle Paul wrote, "Oh, that I might know him," referring to Christ, "and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his suffering." I knew that. I knew that scripture well. I prayed that scripture umpteen times over the course of my walk with Christ. Yet in the midst of my suffering, what did I want? Deliverance from it. And over the course of 2 days, my prayers changed from, Lord, please, please deliver me, to Lord, what would you have me learn? And how might I use it to help others? And in those 2 days, it changed my perspective. It changed the course of my recovery, and it changed the course of my life, because I knew that I was going to have to share my story. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I knew I was going to have to share my story. So I began to jot down the lessons I had learned and the lessons I was learning. And then later, so this was about, I think, late June timeframe. And then in October, I was given the opportunity. I had approached our hospital commander and I asked if I might be able to do this. And so he gave me the opportunity at what was called the Officers Professional Day. And so in the hospital auditorium there at Eisenhower Army Medical Center in Augusta, Georgia, I was given the opportunity to do this. And so I had an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon, and I shared my story and the lessons learned and encouraged those who were struggling to go get help. And so that was the first time I openly, publicly shared my story. And then I also did some public service announcements for the U.S. Department of the Army on mental health issues on the heels of that. So that was the genesis of the book, if you will. Yeah. And so that was 2014. Now we retire from the Army at the end of that year. In May of 2015, I attend this virtual conference with a woman called Christine Closer with a K, and it was called the Author Experience. Something author experience. And she had a variety of people, marketers, publishers, writers, others there that are in the publication writing space. And it was week-long. It was amazing conference that she put on virtually, and it was free. Now, at the end of it, she mentioned a writing contest. This is fascinating. And the contest, you had to submit your answers to these questions. What is your transformational story? It was called the Transformational Author Experience. That's right, TAE. Your transformational story, and then answer some other questions, including how would a book change you? How would it change your readers? How would it change your business? And how would it change your world? And I toyed with that idea. I thought, I have a story to tell. This has certainly changed me. I know it will change others. I'd like to build something out of this. And I definitely will have an impact in this world, if you will, in my world. So I began to work on that. And you have very limited word counts that you had to adhere to in answering these questions. So I worked very, very hard on that and submitted that. And then on August 3rd of that year, I get this call. Yep, by her right-hand person. You won the writing contest. And out of that came a publication.
What a journey.
And that began the journey. Now but then I didn't do much the first year and a half really to write the book. I puttered along and finally said, okay, I gotta settle down. I gotta get this book.
I love your story of the transformation, and I think, um, and I know that you're a strong Christian, but I'm going to say that I think whether a person is a Christian or not a Christian, the transformation of understanding instead of trying to say, well, save me, of looking at what's going through you as what can I learn from this? That's a monumental shift in how we cope in our thinking, and so incredibly valuable to help us move our life forward. So it brings me, however, to you were very fortunate in that somehow, maybe through the call of your brother, the grace of God. I mean, we don't know that there was a shift, right, for you. But in your speech, when you're talking about, the tough guys being an endangered species, you also talk about Private Smith and you tell his story. You came out of the depression, you got help. He committed suicide. And yet in your you tell at one point your readers to decide in the core of your being that you're not going to remain beat down, that you are going to get up. What was it that allowed you, do you think, to get up, but Private Smith couldn't and committed suicide?
I never lost hope. I never, ever lost hope. Oh, as deep, as dark as things got, and I describe that darkness as being in this horrible, deep pit where my head's in a cloud and I'm alone, slogging through a foot of mud. And there's a little speck of light that I never lost hope. And I knew that I was never, ever truly alone, even though it felt like my prayers bounced off the ceiling. I knew I was never, ever truly alone. So I never lost hope. And I think that's the difference, that men cannot live without hope. And I think that's well borne out. Frankl, in his iconic work, points that out so well, that hope allows us to endure so much. It gives life some meaning and allows us to endure things that are inhuman, things beyond imagination in some cases, in terms of the inhumane things that people will endure, the suffering that people will endure, as long as they have hope. And so I never lost hope. I knew I wasn't alone. I knew also that I was going to get better. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed at times, tears streaming down my face next to Sherry, and telling her, honey, I am going to get better. It's not always going to be like this. I am going to get better.
It makes, I think that is something that we underestimate. I feel anyway, that we underestimate the power of hope and the power of believing in something greater than ourselves. And maybe that's what we don't know, because I mean, he's not here to tell us anymore. Private Smith didn't have, but you've worked with and counseled a lot of people that go through depression. And would you say that that is one of the defining characteristics of people who are able to, like you, there's incredible pain and things that you go through, but having the hope as opposed to not having the hope or the belief that there's something greater? Because I think that can make quite a difference in the people that you're dealing with,
Absolutely.
that you're counseling, correct?
Absolutely. No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
In your book, you talk about 4 go-to moves that you developed as wrestling that helped you, that and help you in life. What are those 4 go-to moves? I was wondering, because I was thinking, these have helped him. What are they? Can I use them? Can other people use them? What are these moves?
Well, let's describe a go-to move, what that means first. A go-to move in wrestling is that move that you know that in the toughest situation, with the toughest opponent, that you need to score. When you need to score, you need to put points on the board, and you're in the tightest situation that you can execute that move. That's a go-to move. And so I had some moves like that I knew that it was the rarest person that I could not execute that move on. That, let me tell you, that there were very few people that could stop my double leg takedown, my single leg takedown, my stand up, for instance, my head and heel takedown, a arm bar if I had them down on the mat, or a cross-face cradle. That certain things that you execute on the mat and you say, try to stop it. You know it's coming, but let's see if you can stop this. And so go-to moves are those kind of moves you have in your life. And so I was thinking about when you wrote that. I mean, that was a magnificent question, Dorothea. Nobody's ever asked me that question, believe it or not. So I was thinking about that. What are those things that you go back to? And I call it the basics. When life gets complex, when life gets chaotic, when things happen, you have to have certain things that are very basic. And these are very basic. And so you go back to those basics and you say, I know these work. I know I can rely on them. I know I can do them no matter what. Number one, pray. First and foremost, pray. Because that centers me, that gets me in the right perspective, that helps me understand, okay, I am not alone in this. Number two, breathe. I talk about this idea that change your physiology, change your psychology. And when we are anxious, when we're tense, when we're fearful, what happens? And that our sympathetic, our nervous system, our flight or fight response gets turned on. And this basically short circuits our prefrontal cortex, our ability to think, to reason, to step back and look at the big picture. And simply by doing that tampers everything down, because it activates our parasympathetic nervous system through activating the vagus nerve. And so it lowers our heart rate, lowers our blood pressure, lowers our cholesterol. It now helps our body relax in so many ways. And it opens up that prefrontal cortex. Therefore, our creativity is now available. And we can make better decisions. We can see things better. We have a better perspective. And we're better able to make better choices. So it opens up just all these different realms, and it does other physiologic things to us also when we do that. Gratitude. I teach about this idea, what we appreciates.
Mm-hmm.
We have this amazing neural network in our brain. It's called the reticular activating system. Let's say, for instance, you have had your eye on this emerald green, beautiful Porsche. Tan leather seats. Man, you've been saving up for this, Dorothea, and you can't wait to buy this. Oh man. Now you go out and you buy your Porsche. So you're tootling down the road, enjoying your beautiful new car. Those lovely seats. Oh my gosh. And now what happens when you're out on the road? You're seeing all these Porsches out on the road. In many cases, the same model as yours, different color? Did they suddenly boop, 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 spring out? No, of course not. But your RAS, your reticular activating system, has been now enlightened to them. It's open to them. You're tuned into them. And that's what happens with gratitude. What you appreciate, appreciate. So the more we're grateful, gratitude begets gratitude. So being able to give thanks is so important. And then laughter. Laughter is good medicine. See, I've written a prescription for tens of thousands of patients, and I tell them this medication has no bad side effects, no drug-to-drug interactions, and you can't overdose on it. Proverbs 17:22 says, a merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit tries up this. So I tell Dr. Mondragon's prescription for you is go out and laugh and laugh and laugh some more each and every day, because it's good medicine. Back in the day when you'd write a prescription, I'd hand that to them or put it in their treatment plan and make sure it was written out. Make sure you do that. So those are 4 go-to notes.
So, it's the prayer, the breathing, the gratitude, and the laughter. When it comes to laughter, do you demonstrate? You just say, well, go out and laugh.
Absolutely. I say, and if you need to jumpstart that laughter, find a funny movie that just, a funny movie that just tickles you. Go open up an old yearbook and look through, man, the heritage, the styles, the remembrances about some of your old classmates and some of those zany things you did. That'll kickstart. Go watch some kids play on a playground and the antics they do. Pull out some old picture albums. All those things, any of those things are sure to activate some laughter. Write a joke book if you need to, but do anything to stimulate that laughter, because laughter is good medicine, and it has many of the same things, effects as gratitude. Lowers your blood pressure, lowers your heart rate, decreases your cortisol, the stress hormone. It frees up your creativity. It has healing power because of some of the hormones and prohormones and other chemicals that it releases in our body. It enhances healing, strength, endurance. So many beautiful things that laughter does for us. Yeah. Plus, it bonds us together with other people.
Yeah, laughter is incredible. And in a way, I could laugh right now. I have my window open and my neighbor he's got a really souped up, neat car that the muffler. And I'm wondering, can you hear the noise? Because it may be
I can
on this video, because it's a banger, I'll tell you. Anyway, so it's interesting. There's another thing, that you talk about where you've learned valuable lessons. And I think we've touched on this about suffering can teach you valuable lessons if you're a willing pupil. And I think everything is, because sometimes people fight getting better, which sounds really strange, but they fight the lesson that is there for them to learn, which sometimes takes them down a very slippery slope, going, instead of getting better, they get worse. Have you encountered that with people when you're working with them through depression?
That they fight the suffering and then get worse? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, yes, because acknowledging the suffering, embracing the suffering, and saying, what can I learn from this? And I think for me, a calling came out of this. Certainly a calling came out of this. My mess became my message. But more than that, I learned more compassion. I'm an empath by nature, but I learned a new depth of empathy, a new depth of compassion. I've been a caretaker all my life. From my youngest years, I can remember I was always in charge of my 4 younger brothers. And I'm a caretaker to this day. I'm taking care of other people. I love to serve. But it gave me this new depth to be able to sit with people who suffer, because I had suffered so deeply.
Hmm. And you're a trained doctor. You went into medicine, which of course is of huge service. You know, you talk about grappling with doom and gloom. How did you deal with the negativity, the guilt, and the resentment that came up? I mean, there was a stage where you locked the door, pulled the blinds, and then for 4 hours sat in, curled up in a fetal position under your desk. But until that point, how did you manage the doom and the gloom that was descending on you? Didn't people tell you? I mean, Skip, I think you need to go somewhere. Didn't your wife
I
say
could
something?
I could function. I could go to work, could go to the gym, go to church. Like I said, my world shrunk with a lot of other things I wasn't engaging in. The one person that did know I was depressed was my secretary. She said, "Oh yeah." When I divulged it to my staff, they said, my secretary said, "Oh yeah, I knew." uh, Sherry, I think, was in was in denial, although she knew something was wrong. The insomnia was horrible. I'd be up and down all night, and some nights might sleep an hour or less, many nights. Um, I I was functional for the most part. Uh, I did a lot of journaling. I did a lot of praying. I did a lot of soul searching. I had to do a lot of forgiving. I had to ask myself, why are these feelings coming back up? I've forgiven these people. I've forgiven people in these situations and these people for these things. Why are these things now bubbling back to the surface? What is happening here? And I filled many pages journaling. When I couldn't sleep at night, I'd get up and I'd read my Bible. I'd pray, and I'd oftentimes journal. That's oftentimes how I spent those sleepless nights, which were most nights. Do that, drink some herbal tea or some hot milk, and journal, pray, search my soul.
It's interesting, listening to somebody. I think I might have had moments, but I've never actually been on the receiving end of falling into a deep depression. But I would imagine that there are people walking around right now, going to work with their families, going out doing other activities, that are in the throes of depression and don't quite realize it, and it's just progressing. So what are things like, what are three things, even if I'm in the throes of it but don't realize it, what are three things that we can do that you might recommend that can help us stay off falling in depression or getting deeper into depression if we are already experiencing little slivers of it?
Yeah. Oh, that is a great question. One is learn more quickly to say ouch. That when you are struggling, the willingness to say ouch and to ask for help. Two is to monitor your reserves. One of the things when I looked back retrospectively is in December of 2014, I had the second of three surgeries that occurred in 7 months. And that was one of the things that contributed to this perfect storm of me ending up depressed, because the impact those surgeries had in disrupting my routines and contributing to the insomnia, etc., is I had knee surgery, and all three of those surgeries were fraught with complications, unfortunately. And that one, likewise, is, I remember telling Sherry, I think it was 2 days after Christmas, I am utterly, physically, and emotionally exhausted. But I didn't have enough insight at that point to step back and say, Skip, think about that. Think about the words that just came out of your mouth. So what do you need to do now to take stock and replenish those stores? So you've got to be aware of what's going on, and then you've got to replenish those stores mentally, physically, emotionally. You've got to replenish those. And I did not. I did not take heed at that point. And I think I got a burst there physically and so forth, because my doctor, to treat the complications, had put me on some high dose steroids, corticosteroids, not like an anabolic steroids, but corticosteroids. And I think that masked some of that fatigue and so forth, because, you know, to treat the complications that I had from that knee surgery. And so that got me out of that. But shortly after that, and it's like, you know, then it was this fast again, downward descent to where I hit rock bottom in April. So you've got to monitor and replenish the stores. And then the other is, I think you have to make sure you have a battle buddy or battle buddies that you can confide in, people that you can confide in. That you cannot underestimate the importance of that social support. Loneliness is epidemic, and women are much better at those relationships than men. Well, no doubt about it. I mean, this is well borne out.
It's interesting how we feel that when we handle things alone, it can make a man more macho. I'm not quite sure what the reasoning is. As sometimes women too, right? But it's rare for a woman.
Right.
Yeah.
Women are wired differently. And part of that is the way we're conditioned. Part of that is the way men are raised and the way we're conditioned as we grow up, the role models we see or don't see in terms of that. And there was this term coined by Ronald Levant, former president of the American Psychological Association, called normative male alexithymia. And what this term means
What was that again? What was it called?
Normative male alexithymia.
Okay.
What it means is feelings without words, because I was raised in the era where you were told, don't be a crybaby, don't be a wimp, be a man. So if you're told that kind of thing when you're a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, you suppress those feelings. You just squash them down. And then as you grow up, you don't know how to access those feelings, much less express. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling disappointed. I'm feeling betrayed. I'm feeling confused. And so a whole array of feelings, you don't know how to give word to those. And so you don't know how now to put words to your feelings. And so you have this limited array of feelings you know how to express. Yeah, and cheer and yeah, and joy and, rah, team and so forth. Certainly a limited expression of love. And perhaps the thing you know best how to express, and a lot of these other emotions get expressed as anger, because you haven't had a role model that taught you how to say, I'm sad, I'm disappointed, I feel betrayed, I'm confused, I'm hurt by what that person just said to me. Or see a man openly shed tears. And so those are the things there. So that normative male alexithymia work, the way we were conditioned and raised, and then the role models. Think about it, growing up. Do you see men that were tender, that openly wept, that express these feelings? No, I'm not rugged, tough. tough guy. That's what was on in the movies and portrayed as being the real man. And so it was all of these things that, if you will, conspired against us as we grew up. And so now you end up with men who don't know how to express it.
And therefore can't say ouch.
Yes. And so we are working against that, and we're making progress, thank goodness.
Slowly, and something like giving your TEDx talk, which has been watched by hundreds of thousands of people. Now, developing, I know one of the things you mentioned a lot, you mentioned it in your speech, in your TEDx talk, and you mentioned it in your book at different points about the value of developing daily routines. And in the army, of course, you had routines. That's what the
Oh,
army
yes.
is. But you talk about developing daily routines to train the mind, make the mind stronger, because it was the mind that ran away with you in a way. So what steps do you take, and can you recommend for people to train their mind to build resistance and strength, and also increase levels of gratitude and appreciation?
Right. And routines are important because we all have just a limited amount of willpower. And routines, what they do is they free us up to now devote that limited amount of willpower to those things where there may not be a routine. And now, in making a decision and having to deal with difficult things, now we can devote that to that decision, to those difficult things where there is not a routine in our life. So routines are predetermined decisions, if you will. I know I'm going to do this at this time or in this circumstance, and we don't have to sit there and deliberate about it. I get up in the morning, I'm going to drink my water, I'm going to have my devotions, I'm going to do certain things in the morning, get outside and try to get my at least 5 minutes of sunshine to help with my circadian rhythm. So these kind of things that are predetermined, that I'm not going to sit here and say, well, am I going to type of thing. So when we already have these built into our day, it frees us up, and they're not having to waste mental energy thinking about it, contemplating it. So that's the beauty of routines in our life. So in terms of building that up, I think it just goes back to those same things, that the more we can do a little structure. Part of that is, I think, there are some best practices, sometimes things like same place for same things, in terms of the way you structure your environment. I have a place where I have my devotions. That's where I sit, generally speaking. Sometimes I'll go outside because it's a beautiful day and I like to be outside and have them. But generally speaking, I sit at a certain place, whereas on my couch there, where I sit, I have my Bible and other books in my journal and so forth, that's where I sit and have my devotions. So that is where I do that. So creating that environment, knowing that's where I do this, can help, because it puts you in that mindset. Similarly, I go do if you're doing work for certain things, and I think this is especially valuable in terms of now that we work more and more from home. Okay, it's time to go upstairs and work on XYZ during this time. And so these are some of the things that help now us make those shifts. And then doing things for a certain amount of time. I'm going to set my timer for the next 30 minutes. This is going out of reach, so I'm not tempted to sit here. Oh, let me check. Oh, yeah, something comes to mind. Let me check such and such. So I keep a little pad next to me, so when something comes up, I need to check such and such, do that. I can jot that little note there and not be distracted. Oh, I need to check. Did so-and-so send a message? Did this happen? Did I get this email? I can jot that down while I'm working on this. And the next 30 minutes, I devote myself to whatever task is there. I can take a 5-minute break, get up, move around, do whatever, maybe even take a little walk around the block, up and down the stairs a few times, get a drink of water, do some things, activate my body, set my timer for 5 more or 30 more minutes, go back to the task at hand. So those are some of the things to help us train that mind. Now, in terms of dealing with negativity, that's even a little bit of a beast of its own, because when you're dealing with negativity, you have to counter those negative thoughts. And part of that is assessing the lie, if you will. I got to a point early on in my therapy. I remember talking to my therapist, Lieutenant Colonel Mike Perry, licensed. Mike is a clinical psychologist extraordinary, wonderful man. We hit it off. We had a tremendous therapeutic alliance. We were like in a lot of ways. And I remember coming in and saying, Mike, I thought my career was going to end on a high note, not with a whimper. I felt so defeated, was so discouraged, lost my confidence, indecisive due to the depression. And he looked at me and said, sir, I think it will. Let's look at the evidence. And he began to give me some assignments. He said, for instance, one week, I want you to look at 3 eras from your career, and I want you to write down 10 accomplishments from each of those periods. And as I began to write, you get to 10. Oh, and there were more than 10. And next, oh, get to 10. There's more than 10. Oh, get to 10. Oh, there's more than 10. And then another one was, I want you to write down 10 people that you impacted positively in those periods. You get to 10. Oh, there's more than 10. There's 10. There's more than 10. Oh, and I want you to write down the things you're most proud of in regards to your contributions. And again, the list grew longer than what he had assigned. So part of it was being able to look at things more objectively and to see, because depression, one of the big things there that battered me and batter people with depression are what's called negative ruminations. A ruminator, a cow, for instance, they bring up their cud, they chew it, and they swallow it, and continue to do that. Well, negative ruminations are these negative thoughts that just batter day in. And I was being battered by these thoughts. You let your department down. You let the hospital down. You let your staff down. You let the residents down. You let your family down. You don't deserve to be a colonel. Who's going to want to hire you? You're a fake. Night and day. And of course, when do these thoughts scream the loudest? In the silence of that. And so I was wrestling with those. I had to learn to counter those. I had to get my confidence and decisiveness back up. And Mike helped me to do that. And that's the beauty of a therapy like cognitive behavioral therapy. You're actually rewiring your brain. And so he helped me to look at, okay, what are these lies we're listening to still? What are these lies? And why? And that's what they are. They're lies. And what's the true evidence?
Yeah, that's just a wonderful story, how you explain that, because they are lies, except we take them as being true. And to have somebody who actually is skilled in dealing with that and having us rewire, because it requires rewiring the brain. there's just so much. I had so many other questions that I wanted to ask you, but I see our time is up. If there is one thing right now as we wrap up, Skip, that you can suggest for people to help someone that they know that is near and dear, that is suffering from depression, and the person is in denial, what's one thing that a loved one can do to support them?
Listen.
Listen.
Listen
Definitely not
and
tell them they're
encourage them to
depressed.
get. No, no. They know they're struggling. Listen and kindly suggest they may want to get some help. They might benefit from some help. Don't tell them you need to go get help, but you know, what do you think? You think getting some help might be a good idea? Men don't want to be told. Nobody wants, and nobody, man or woman, wants to be told what to do. But a suggestion, I'm concerned. I see you've been struggling. I know you're hurting. What do you think? You think it'd be a good idea that maybe you might want to see somebody, might want to get some help? Maybe call your doctor or somebody. Maybe talk to your pastor, your rabbi, your mom, somebody that might be able to help you.
And listen. Before we wrap up, is there anything else, Skip, that you would like to share about your book? I know you do counseling, you have a support group for people. Is there anything you want to let people out there know? Yes, your book.
There's Wrestling Depression is Not for Wimps available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, other Google, other platforms there that is written for men and short, easy to read chapters written in layman's terms and to be put in practice today. I also have a private Facebook group particularly for men, well, specifically for men, I should say, that is entitled Life After PCS, Life After PCS. PCS means permanent change of station. So as we go through struggles, as we go through changes, because when you go through a permanent change of station, moving to a new duty station, there are a lot of changes you go through. And men, we go through changes and transitions that will affect our lives. And so this is a Facebook group that you can find on Facebook, that you will be asked to answer 3 questions to join the Facebook group. I'd love to have you join us as we deal with some of these issues in greater detail.
Well, thank you so much, Skip, for sharing. And really, even though I know it's for men, Wrestling Depression is Not for Wimps, I found it a wonderful. There were a lot of things that I noticed in that were helpful for me, right? And I thought, oh, never thought of doing that. What a great tip. So even though I know you're recommending it for men and it's a book about men not being wimps, it's a good read for women as well.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. For anybody that's struggling with depression or anybody that has a loved one struggling with depression, this book is a valuable resource indeed.
Thank you so much, Skip. It's been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure. I learn so much every time we speak, which is not that often, but maybe we'll have to make it more often. It's really thank you for being on this interview. To everybody out there, wishing you and wishing Skip mountains of lots of laughter, feeling great, mountains of success.
Thank you.